Hey everybody, welcome to Studio 64. My name's David. I've been searching the interzones for some more science, space and tech news to share with you. And I found this over at ABC News in Australia. Yes, power-hungry data centres are scrambling to find enough electricity to meet demand. Yes. Fascinating, isn't it? Yes, they're all, everyone's on the internet screaming about climate change, and the only way to push that message is to get more coal-fired power stations up and running. Digital irony. Fascinating. Yes, energy experts fear the growing number of power-hungry data centres could make electricity more expensive. Now, data centres could consume as much as 8% of the grid's demand by 2030. Data centre operators are turning to renewable sources to power new centres. Well, good luck with that. Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? All you need is some, wind turbines and to be frozen, and some solar panels to be covered up, and the next thing you're gone. Even though Australia doesn't have a lot of snow, there's some areas that do get it, and I just find it intensely interesting that people have got no clue. As I said, I'm not against renewable energy. I just believe that we shouldn't pull out the tried and true methods of energy production until the green energy is, shall we say, proven itself. Inside a vault of this data center is what looks like a hotel for computers. It's noisy and hot. Each of these blinking server racks belongs to a business or an organization. They house their critical infrastructure and data here because it's highly secure, with layers of security, including ID checks and fingerprints, just to get in. Now, whether that's networking or just general computer infrastructure, David Diezenkiel, I'm sorry, David, I've mispronounced your name there, Chief Customer and Commercial Officer of NextDC, told the business inside a data hall. Now, we run 14 data centres across the country, servicing customers from the largest multinationals through to Australia's largest companies, all the way through to small businesses. Yes, we rely on technology for everything, whether it's our healthcare, banking services, or government services. And we noticed what happened the other day with the crowd strike. Yeah, as I called it, clown strike, because the entire circus fell over for it. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? And it was only the Windows machines that were affected, apparently. Any clients with a Mac or a Linux machine, which I suspect because they share the same heritage, believe it or not, didn't have an issue. Yeah. And it's just interesting to me that we rely on technology so much. I'm surprised. I have a son, and one day he lost his card to access his bank card to access money, or use it to pay for things. And I said, well, that's okay. Grab your photo ID. We'll go into a bank and draw cash over the counter. I had to actually assist him in doing that. Yeah. So, for whatever reason, he lost his card and his phone. He didn't know how he could do banking. Now, don't get me wrong. I love internet banking. I use it all the time. But you need to have some kind of backup, and that backup is being able to go into the shop front of a bank and do business. Yeah. A lot of banks are closing their branches down because they're not getting the foot traffic, which I understand. But then the moment we have an outage like we had the other day, everyone's in panic mode. Yeah. I love technology, but I have a little bit of cash lying around too. Yeah. So there is no industry that isn't relied on data today. And that's very, very true. Yes, this data center hosts critical IT structure for everything from businesses to major hospitals. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Interesting indeed. Yes, soaring demand. Australia is one of the top 5 data center hubs in the world. There are 214 data centres spread across the country, according to the Australian Information Industry Association. With the explosion of cloud computing and artificial intelligence, the industry is expected to grow exponentially. We believe that we're at the beginning of a massive shift with AI. Yes, David, word I won't pronounce in case I insult him again, said. We truly believe that we're at the beginning of a change in accelerated computing that could see demand skyrocket over the next decade. And there's David himself. Yep, and I agree with him. It's going to skyrocket over the next decade, the demand for server farms, particularly with cloud computing. Yeah, power-hungry beasts, they certainly are. Data centres are already big power users in Australia. They need significant amounts of electricity to run high-intensity computing and cooling systems. Just one large data center can consume the same of energy required to power 50,000 homes. Now, Morgan Stanley estimates that data centers currently are using 5% or 1,050 megawatts of the electricity on Australia's power grid, and that is expected to grow to 8% or 2,500 megawatts by 2030. Now, some estimates even suggest they could require up to 15% of the power grid by then. Yeah, very interesting, because back in 2003, I was looking at the data that somebody did a big data analysis of all the information stored compared to 2023. So you did that sort of 20-year comparison, and in 20 years we'd accumulated more data than the entire history of the human race. Of course, a lot of that was stupid selfies and OnlyFans, I'm suspecting, but yeah, just in 20 years, more of the entire written history of the entire human race. Now, that being the case, it's going to get more, and I believe 15%. I have a suggestion. My thought is, and my opinion on this only, is that it's going to be up to about 20%, maybe even higher, 25%, based on artificial intelligence, because we don't know how big that's going to grow and how much that's going to expand. We can look at it and go, I think that's right. But I think these numbers are a little bit on the conservative side, to be honest with you. And there's Professor Bruce Mountain. What a great name. Says the expansion of data centers will drive up electricity demand. Well, of course they will. And the people who complain the most about, we have to watch a Netflix special on climate change are going to demand their rights to be able to stream Netflix documentaries. And until they get it, they're going to go into all Karen mode. So the only way that these things can be provided is with coal-fired power stations. God, I love the irony of that. Straining grid. As the nation races to electrify, with households dumping gas appliances and more people driving electric vehicles, the grid is already under pressure from rising demand. God, I can't understand how people don't get it. The Chinese in 2022 alone ordered 300 million more tons of coal from places like Australia in order to drive coal-fired power stations, ironically, to make electric vehicles. So, people in the West can drive around and go, I'm morally superior, I love the environment. Fascinating, isn't it? The Australian Energy Market Operator's last integrated system plan anticipates overall electricity consumption from the grid to nearly double by 2050. Now, the director of the Victoria Energy Policy Centre, Bruce Mountain, said Australia was not well placed to cope with that increasing demand. No, we're not. I remember living in the state of Victoria back in, between 2014 and 2019. I'm now in New South Wales. But they thought they'd do this wonderful thing, because they were exporting power to states like South Australia and Tasmania at one point. And the moment they went green, so instead of having 6, say for argument's sake, this is just a number, right? But 6 coal-fired power stations. To me, you would look at the oldest, most uneconomical one, most inefficient one, take that off the grid, leave the other 5 going, and put in your renewables. As the renewables grew better and proved themselves, you could then go, okay, what's the next oldest coal-fired power station we can take off the grid and replace that with renewables? Oh, no, what did they do in the state of Victoria? Pulled the plug on the lot. And when I was living down there, there was constant brownouts, and the power outages for days at a time. I mean, this is a modern Western nation. That's ridiculous. Why? It doesn't make it makes no sense unless you say, well, look, they've obviously gone completely bonkers. That doesn't mean I don't want renewable energy or green energy. It simply says it's too early. That's what I say. It's too early. Goodness gracious. I mean, let's get rid of petrol or gasoline-powered motor vehicles. No. They've proven themselves and they've been around for over 100 years. Let's not get rid of them yet. Okay? Right? Yeah, sure. Phase into electric vehicles. That's great. But don't just go by 2030. Now all of a sudden they're talking 2035, 2040 and 2050. So come on. There's no way zero emissions is ever going to happen. And for God's sake, even if you go totally vegan and decide not to have cows farting, there's always going to be some kind of emission on the planet. There's no way you can get rid of it. It's completely insane. Dear, oh dear. we're now hitting the difficult stages of the energy transition, Professor Mountain told the business. We've got wind and sun and land, but we don't have other clean energy, biomass, or decent amounts of hydro or nuclear. Yeah, we have a hydroelectric scheme in the Snowy Mountains. That was fantastic. That was a government infrastructure thing that gave a lot of people jobs and was built back in the 50s and the 60s to employ a lot of everybody after World War II. And a lot of people got into that and set up a lot of support industries. That's still going, 60, 70 years later. It's an amazing piece of infrastructure. I don't understand what the problem is. Why can't the governments go and do that infrastructure sort of, commitment now, something that's decades, long before they get out of, long after they get out of political power. But politicians, like in every country of the world, here in Australia, what do? They're only looking forward to the next election, either maintaining power or gaining power. They don't give a crap about you or I. They don't really give a crap about the environment. As I say, I'm not a climate change person. I'm still not convinced, but I do believe in ecology. Clean air, clean water. Water, make sure the animals aren't being destroyed at a high rate. But come on, because when I was growing up, it was global freezing. Or a new ice age is coming. Then it was, what was it? Well, that didn't work. It was the ozone layer. Unless you had 16 billion tons of sunblock on you, you're all gonna die from sun exposure. Then it was global warming, and by the year 2000, we're all going to be drowned. We're going to drown because the ice caps would melt. And then when 2000 came along, it didn't happen. They came up with climate change. To me, the whole thing's a load of garbage. It's just a way of, giving people something to talk about and making money out of the gullible. And that's literally all it is. It's just another tax. And people don't get it. You're being taxed on everything. You look at the household bills we get in Australia, there's always a climate levy. And the government comes out and says, gee, your electricity bills are going up. We'll reduce the hourly rate for you. And then we'll use that as a political thing when we go to run for re-election or for election or whatever the case is. But if you had a look at the bill, the amount we did this and it was a promise and we kept it. We reduced the hourly rate of your electricity cost. Yeah, but the climate levy went up 5% or 10%. So the bill's either exactly the same or even higher. Don't think that all of us are morons and we'll just accept it. Some of us actually have, surprisingly, 2 brain cells left after all the Irish Catholic drinking I've done over decades. And we actually can rub those together and look at these things and go, yeah, come on, something ain't right here. So we've got wind, sun and land, but we don't have other clean energy. And that's a disadvantage that we face that other countries don't face. Now, Professor Mountain thinks although the data centre sector is a vital service to Australia's economy, the boom will make the energy transition more challenging. Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, it's probably going to blow it. Now they're talking 2050. They're probably going to blow out to 2060 or 2070, the transition to clean energy. The irony is we're going to use artificial intelligence to help us solve the climate crisis. And yet in order to do that, we're going to have these dirty, great bloody data centres crunching all these numbers, and they're going to be relying on coal. That's it. It's just think about it. Dear Lord. They make the transition challenge harder because not just that you need to replace coal-fired generation, you need to build new capacity to reach rising demand, he said. It's not yet an insurmountable problem, but if the demand continues to escalate at the rate it is based on recent developments, I think it's an issue. And he's a gentleman by the name of Tony Wood, says more data centres plug into the existing grid could lead to higher energy prices. Well, Tony, I think that's exactly what is going to happen. Yeah, more price pressure. And who's paying this? Ordinary householders. Everyday people like you and me, we're the ones that are going to have to pay higher for our electricity. I wonder if these elites in their ivory towers with their politicians have to worry about it. And then, because it just doesn't affect us, it affects the businesses as well. And they're going to have to pass their prices on to the consumers. So we're paying high prices for electricity, high prices for your groceries, and elites come out and go, weren't eggs always $15 a carton? Keep the environment clean, climate change bad. Yeah, mate, but we can't afford to feed our families and keep a roof over our head. We don't give a crap about what, and they're going, you are disrespectful plebs. You should be protecting the environments, you bastards. Yeah, we don't give a crap. We're busy trying to survive down here. Thank you. Yeah? No, eggs weren't always $15 a carton, and you don't care because you don't even do your own grocery shopping. Freaking hell. The politicians and celebrities always do that, and they fascinate me with it. They're so out of touch with everybody. The director of the energy program at the Grattan Institute, Tony Wood, agreed the sector presents a unique challenge to the grid. Now, that means putting pressure on our electricity grid. It means putting pressure on our greenhouse gas emissions, he said. If you add a lot more demand and you don't add more supply, then prices go up. Oh, really? I think governments can get on top of this, but now is the time to be doing it. They should have been doing it 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Governments all over the world don't actually do anything. They just say that they're doing things. And then when they get into power and go, I'm sorry, we can't do what we promised, they just blame the previous guy. Fascinating. Energy Minister Chris Bowen said the first auction of the Capacity Investment Scheme, which will support 60 gigawatts of new power, has received more than 40 gigawatts of projection registrations, showing there's a strong pipeline of renewables ready to go. Well, get them out there then, and don't make them cheap and nasty. We saw very, very similar things happen here in Australia with our... we have an NBN, which is the National... the National Broadband Network. My God, what a joke that was. It's an infrastructure infrastructure project like a highway or a hydroelectric dam. It's designed, so it should be designed for decades. It could be upgradable and scalable. So it's beyond the regular 4-year term of a government, right? Or any politician. And it should be bipartisan. It's not left side or right side. But it was used as a political football in our elections. And let's make it on the cheap. And let's do it this and let's do it that. And of course, they stuffed it up so completely that by the time they actually got it up and running, and with all particularly the failure during the pandemic, because the NBN was, didn't do so well, because half people were working at home and the other half were watching Netflix and sitting on their bums all day. So then they realised they had to spend 3 times the amount of money to get it up and running. I mean, for God's sake, do it once and do it right. You're going to get people complaining about the cost, but if you simply point out and say, if we do this once, we do it right, we're going to be okay for the future. And it's beyond the 4-year term of any particular government, of any particular party. But no, of course, and as soon as they get in, this is the other guy's fault. It's the one before us, And the opposition, what do? Oh, it's the government's fault. They blame each other, and who suffers for it? The people that are using it. And then we find we've got to pay triple for it. Like, dear Lord. Yes, this is a fellow by the name of James McGill, says locating data centres in regional areas makes it easier to co-locate renewable energy sources for them. That's an interesting point. And if you go back to, ironically, it goes back to the first days of the internet in the late 60s, in 69 with DARPA, the Defense Agency, was it Defense Agency Research, Advanced Research Projects, from the American government. The idea was to have these data centers, the information stored, is what we call a data center, in different cities all over America in different locations. It was in the middle of the Cold War. So the idea is you didn't centralize everything. There's no point having everything in one large data center, because if a Russian former Soviet ICBM came across and took out the one data center, you had no communication. So if one of these missiles came along and regrettably took out a major US city, which I hope never happens for God's sake, you would still have all that data accessible in other parts of the country. Similar to uploading a YouTube video. When a creator uploads a YouTube video and goes to their channel, it gets split and goes to different data centers all over the world. So if one happens to go down, that video is still accessible, unless YouTube changes their terms of service and you get your videos pulled down because they've changed their minds in the goalposts or something. But take that part of it out of it. When the video is uploaded, as I say, it goes to different servers all over the planet, and that's decentralization. And I think decentralization to me is a good thing. Think of it too like you're having things available, the same thing available on different devices. So you can use your laptop, you can use your desktop, you can use your phone, and all do the same thing on them. Now, if you happen to lose your phone, if that wasn't decentralized and you only had all that stuff on your phone, you're in a bit of trouble. At least if you lose your phone, you can jump on your laptop and find where your phone is. So it's all decentralized. It's fascinating. Energy retailer and Origin generator Origin supplies power to about a third of all data centers in Australia. Oh my God, what the hell's that? Oh, it's Kamala Harris. Oh dear Lord. Frightened for a minute there. The man in charge of these accounts said the company was looking at a range of options to meet their needs. Typically, we'll look at solutions like distributed generation, so wind or solar at site, storage solutions and backup generation, and using energy from the grid as well, James McGill, head of Origin Zero, told the business. Our customers with their forecasts would vary somewhat, but typically these growth forecasts could be between about 10 and 30% per year. Mr. McGill said to meet those energy requirements, companies would be strategic about where they build their data centers. Some of the locations could be more regional, and that can match some of the new renewable generation. So yes, it does happen in places like my hometown of Newcastle. Newcastle in Australia is the largest city outside the capitals. Now, so you're talking the capitals being Sydney, New South Wales, Melbourne in Victoria, Hobart in Tasmania, Darwin in the Northern Territory, Adelaide, South Australia, and Perth in WA. So being that, and being so close to Sydney, only about 100 miles away, 160 kilometres, and because now with the internet, that doesn't really, at that point, the distance doesn't really matter when you're communicating. But it matters when it comes to infrastructure, because Newcastle has a similar infrastructure to capital cities. We have people here, that can actually work, in these data centers and everything else. And costs are generally lower. So it makes it a very, very attractive proposition for not just, data centers, but call centers and all this sort of thing here in Newcastle. Because it's really surprising how many major companies have offices, call centers and everything else here in little old Newcastle. Now, they obviously have them in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, that sort of thing, in the capitals, but very much here too. But when it comes down to these power-hungry data centers, we really need to look at the continuation of coal. Yeah, because as I say, let's go towards renewable energy. That's fine, but you're going to have to use artificial intelligence to try and get it done quickly, and they require a lot of power and a lot of electricity and a lot of computing power. I don't know whether you noticed, but here in Australia, our computers run on electricity. We even have that new electric lighting things now. Right. Oh, right. We even have doors on our huts. And running water. And what's that fancy thing again that I saw in that guy's house the other day? I don't know whether it's going to take off. Yeah, I don't think I like it. I don't think it's called a flushing toilet. We do have those, surprisingly, yeah. But this will be very interesting. And as usual, I'll leave the link to the main article below the video so you can pop in, check out the embedded links, go for a bit of a deeper dive. Now, there's a 13-minute video here on the ABC Australia TV show called The Business. And it's a really good little video on, everyone just use their device to log on. But where is that where is that data stored? And when you access your Spotify or your Facebook or your Instagram, or your YouTube video, your Rumble videos and all this sort of thing. Which, by the way, reminds me, rumble.com, go and check it out. It's going to become very, very important as a video streaming site alternative to YouTube, especially with the American elections coming up in November. Next year's going to be huge for it. Really interesting stuff, this little video here. Yeah, so check it out if you get the time. All right, well, my name is David. Thanks for joining me for another Studio 64 Science, Space and Tech News update. I shall see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. Greatly appreciate it. If you're up for it, drop a comment down below the video because I'd love to hear what you think. All right, take care. And as I always say, if you can't be good at it. And as I also always say,
I'll be back.